Okay, this is part 3 with my birds upstairs. They're very loud in the morning, and I'm barely awake. I thought I would try something different and just have the camera on the actual screen where the article is. I'm sure the article is actually several places on the internet. It's been around for a while. But here's one of the places. I'm just going to zoom in on the link so you can see it. I don't even know if you can see that. I don't know if the camera is not focusing or if it's just me who isn't focusing. But I know to get the whole picture on this, the whole screen into the picture, I have to go all the way back to here, and I don't know if anybody can read that small, but I just thought it might be smart to do it this way, even though the waterfall was so much more fascinating, and the the sunset, that was really cool. I loved the freeze, the way the water would freeze sometimes, and then go really fast. Okay, so this is part 3 of the article, Did a Historical Jesus Exist? By Jim Walker. And it was published originally, if I didn't say this already, June 12, 1997. What about writings during the life of Jesus? What is most revealing of all is not what was later written about Jesus, but what was not written about him. Consider that not a single historian, philosopher, or any author who lived during the alleged time of Jesus ever mentions him. Take, for example, the works of Philo Judaeus, who was born 20 BCE and died 50 CE. He was a Jewish Hellenistic philosopher and historian who lived in the area of Jerusalem during the alleged life of Jesus. He wrote detailed accounts of the events that occurred in the surrounding area, yet not once in all of his volumes of writings do we read a single account of a Jesus the Christ. Amazingly, we have not one Jewish, Greek, or Roman writer, even those who lived in the Middle East, much less anywhere else on the earth, who ever mentions him during his lifetime. This is quite extraordinary, and you will find few Christian apologists who dare mention this embarrassing fact. To illustrate this extraordinary absence of Jesus literature, just imagine going through 19th century literature looking for an Abraham Lincoln, but unable to find a single mention of him in any writings on earth. Yet straight-faced Christian apologists and historians want you to buy a factual Jesus out of a dearth void of evidence, and rely on nothing but hearsay written well after his purported life. Considering that Christians believe that Jesus was a God on earth, the Almighty gives an embarrassing example for explaining his existence. You'd think a creator might at least back up some good, solid evidence. Okay, down the page here. I'm going to actually scroll this. I don't know why I'm filming the screen. I'm sure it's probably not legible for anybody, but oh well. Historical scholars. There occurs many problems with the reliability of the accounts from ancient historians such as Josephus, Tacitus, etc. Most of them did not provide sources for their claims, as they rarely included bibliographic listings or supporting claims. They did not have access to modern scholarly techniques, and many times would include hearsay as evidence. No modern scholar today would be taken seriously if he used the standards of ancient historians. Yet this is the very kind of information that Christian history comes from. Couple this with the fact that many historians were Christians themselves, sometimes members of the church, and you have a built-in prejudice toward supporting a real Jesus. In modern scholarship, even the best historians and Christian apologists play the historian game. They can only use what's available to them. If it's only hearsay that they have, then they are forced to play the cards they are dealt with. Many use interpolation or guesses from hearsay, and yet this very dubious information sometimes ends up in encyclopedias and history books as fact. In other words, biblical scholarship is forced into a lower standard by the very sources they are dealing with. This was illustrated clearly in an interview by the renowned biblical scholar David Noel Freedman. Freedman, the general editor of the Anchor Bible series and many other works. He was asked about biblical interpretation, and Freedman wrote, "We have to accept somewhat looser standards. In the legal profession, to convict the defendant of a crime, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt in civil cases. A preponderance of the evidence is sufficient. When dealing with the Bible or any ancient source, we have to loosen up a little, otherwise we can't really say anything." David Noel Freedman in Bible Review Magazine, December 1993, page 34. The implications are obvious. If one wishes to believe in a historical Jesus, he must accept it based on loose standards. Couple this with the fact that all of the claims come from hearsay, and we have a foundation made of sand and a castle of information built out of cards. Okay, scrolling down some more. Citing geography and known historical figures as evidence. Although the New Testament mentions various cities, geographical sites, kings, and people that existed and lived during the alleged life of Jesus, these descriptions cannot be used as evidence for the existence of Jesus. Many works of fiction include recognizable locations, and many of them mention actual people. Homer's Odyssey, for example, describes the travels of Odysseus through the Greek islands. The epic describes in detail many locations that existed in history, but should we take Odysseus, the Greek gods and goddesses, one-eyed giants, and monsters as literal fact simply because the story depicts graphic locations accurately? Of course not. Mythical stories, fictions, and narratives almost always use familiar landmarks as places for their stories. Even Superman and Star Trek include recognizable cities, planets, and landmarks. And just because the Gospels mention cities and locations in Judea and known historical people, this says nothing about the actuality of the characters portrayed in the stories. However, when a story uses impossible historical locations or geographical errors, we may question the authority of the claims. For example, in Matthew 4, verse 8, the author describes the devil taking Jesus into an exceedingly high mountain to show him all the kingdoms of the world. Since there exists no spot in the spheroid earth to view all the kingdoms, we know that the Bible errs here. Well, I'm just going to interject a side note. When I was a Christian, I just assumed that Satan took Jesus to a point above the planet. That was my way of getting around that. John 12:21 says, "The same came therefore to Philip, which was of Bethsaida of Galilee." Bethsaida is in Galilee. Gosh, this is me trying to pronounce big words in the morning. Okay, see, that's the sentence. Okay, well, you can read it yourself. In fact, I'll just do this here. Okay, because there's going to be a lot of big words. I just know it. I do. And I just suck. Okay. John 2:23 says, "The same came therefore to Philip, which was of..." Wait. I'm reading the wrong one. I'm trying to read through the camera. Okay, I'm sorry. John 3:23 says, okay. John also was baptizing in Arnon near Salem. Critics agree that no such place as Aenon exists near Salem. We have not a shred of evidence for a village named Nazareth at the time of the alleged Jesus. That's a pretty big thing. Jesus of Nazareth, and there is not a shred of evidence that that place existed during Jesus' lifetime. Many more errors and unsupported geographical locations appear in the New Testament, and although these cannot be used as evidence against the historical Jesus, we can certainly question the reliability of the texts. If the scriptures make so many factual errors about geology, science, and contain contradictions, we can pretty much conclude that errors could crop up in any area. If we have a coupling with historical people and locations, then we should also have some historical reference of a Jesus to these locations and people. But just the opposite proves the case. The Bible depicts Herod, the ruler of Jewish Palestine under Rome, as sending out men to search and kill the infant Jesus. Yet nothing in history supports such a story. Pontius Pilate supposedly performed as judge in the trial and execution of Jesus, yet not a single Roman record mentions such a trial. The Gospels portray a multitude of believers throughout the land, spreading tales of a teacher, prophet, and healer, yet nobody in Jesus' lifetime ever records such a figure. The lack of a historical Jesus in the known historical record speaks for itself. Okay, so that's part 3. I need my coffee. It's sitting here beside me and I haven't even had a sip of it yet, so I'm going to go and have that now, and we'll have a part 4 for anybody who's just dying to hear this whole article. Thanks for listening if you have. Bye-bye.